All right, Brett. So with that as a backdrop and with all of this craziness going on, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great always to be with you and look forward to spending some time together.
Well, it's kind of different because as I said in the intro, we've been connected with you since January of 2018. And I like just today saw my to-do, rewatch the March webinar from Elite. Like I tie into you guys all the time. And I know you're doing some special things right now for the community on managing people, managing cash flow, managing stuff in chaos, right? Talk a little bit about that whole situation.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So you're doing this cool series on thriving during chaos. And, speaking of chaos and unusual times, when you have to work from home and your internet goes down, you got to run down the street to somebody else's house. So I'm in the backyard of somebody else's house, but that's what we do, right? We adapt, we change. I'm also repping some really cool gear here.
Nice.
Wicked smart.
Perfect.
it, anyway, so we're doing some cool things every week right now for our community, not just for our community, for any business owner. We're hosting calls on managing cash and leading people, because these are unusual times. And so those are the two things that seem to be most relevant for everyone. And we're just pumping out support and resources for people.
Yes, I was asking you before we started recording and filming. I assumed it was for members, and you said you literally, like all the listeners, can go to this resource page. Am I correct?
That's right. Any of your listeners, any of the businesses you all work with, anybody can go to these resource pages. We have people register if they want to sign up for an upcoming call, but then we put all of the recordings from past calls just on a public page so that it can help as many people as possible.
All right, so super cool no matter what business you're in, because Brett certainly does not focus just in real estate, as you know from my introduction. So Brett, what's the link they can go to? Like, what should they tie into before we start talking about some of the stuff you'll go over?
So anyone can go to Grow with Elite, which is growwwitelite.com/COVID. That's just our resources page for any business owner who's struggling with managing cash and leading people during these unusual times.
Okay, cool. So what would you say people have been asking you, because you're some of an expert in all of this, and I know you've been on calls about this. So what are some high points, Brett, that you're telling people right now, entrepreneurs big and small? What are some high points that you can think of?
Well, high points from the get-go, and I think most people are adjusting now, but high points were, hey, we got to get ourselves in a good place as leaders before we can help others, right?
Mm-hmm.
With all the uncertainty swirling around us, how do we get our own mental and emotional health in a good place? Apply the oxygen mask here first so that then we can help other people around us. So some really great tips around personal or self-care, and then how to help your people with those same issues. I would also say another big one is just how do we get clarity? As you know, we're big on setting the vision and getting clear, 3 to 5 years out, and annual planning and quarterly or trimester plans. And while all of that is still important, we need to keep that longer term in place. The short term is a lot less clear, and we need to get super tactical, hyper focused with our teams on what we're going to do this week, what we're going to do today to move things forward. So a little bit different when you can't see very far. When you're driving in snow or dust or fog, you change the way you drive, right? And the same thing is true right now with low visibility conditions in our business. We got to change a little bit the way that we plan.
So, okay, so this is interesting. So I think about in my first episode, I talked about like realtors. They're just getting, and that's not our database usually. There's some realtors, but I just know from the business, they're getting beat up by attorney generals telling them to stay home, and, sellers afraid to have them in. So I'm using that as an example, but how does the small business owner go, okay, like, do they ask, how can I questions? Like, how do they navigate? I'm talking the next 2 weeks, like you just alluded to. Any suggestions? Like the ones that are kind of in the panic or fear.
Yeah, so you got to calm that fear down first. You're not going to do a lot of creative problem solving, reasoning, logic, right? These front brain, frontal cortex types of thinking when your brain is stuck in survival mode. that amygdala lizard brain that has us all looking, scanning the environment for possible threats because we want to preserve ourselves. And right now the threat alarms are going off like crazy in our brains. And a lot of business owners are just freezing. They're just saying, okay, I'm going to wait this out. We can't just wait it out. Like, we need to be very proactive. So we got to calm down the brain a little bit and acknowledge, hey, this is an unusual circumstance. But just like everything else in my life that's happened to me that wasn't expected or that was adversity, we will get through this, right? Like, you have 100% track record of getting through hard things in the past. We can get through this as well. We got to settle down that very limited thinking brain of ours. It's just focused on survival, so that then we can get into more creative space. We had a great call yesterday with a guy named Rick Barrera on generate cash now, all on creative ways to think about new things that business owners can do to generate cash now. That's the space you got to be in as a business owner. So that recording will also be on that resource page that I told you about. But got to get out of survival mode, got to get our teams out of survival mode and thinking collectively on the creative problem solving that will help us navigate through these interesting times.
I think, for lack of a better word, the good news is there's so many people in that mode, that freeze mode that you talked about. And so when you do ask yourself, how can I generate cash flow? How can I do the planning now? How can I, it's almost like you got little to no competition. I don't know how else to say it, because people aren't doing that right now. Like in our industry, here's an example. In our industry, I know of about 4 events that got canceled, done. They didn't do it. That was probably hundreds of thousands of revenue for them. What we did is we just pivoted and went to virtual. But that's a good example of, there's not many people doing that. So all the people wanted to come to our event. So do you see that in other industries too? You must.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I hate to keep referring to this resource page, but I did a call last week on creative ways to engage employees, prospects, and customers during these times. And the vast majority of them are examples like the one you just cited. In fact, you're going to want to go listen to it because I used you as one of the examples.
Good.
Who on the earth, who on planet Earth had a live event April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd and decided to go forward with it? Well, you guys did. You pivoted really fast and you went online. You did a virtual version of it. And not only were you able to achieve some sales goals from it, but if I understand correctly, you exceeded some of those sales goals. And that's just what the creative people will do right now. They will find a way to make this happen. And just as you pointed out, the vast majority of businesses they're like in paralysis mode. And so the best businesses will win, right? They'll come out of this way stronger.
Yeah, I used to say to Kim, I mentioned this in the first episode, but I used to say to Kim back in the 90s, I'm dating myself here, but I used to tell her, as a realtor, when the market slowed down, and so now it's kind of similar, but not as bad, I'd say, great, because it's going to purge a lot of the weaker entrepreneurs, and the strong not only survive, they crank during this time. I mean, to go back to what you said, yes, we have more attendance, but you know what they love? Because of what's going on, they love being online with the community. And then we had breakouts, and they loved being in little breakout rooms and talking to people. They wouldn't have done that at a live event. So it was actually better, way better.
Yeah, and you guys were just not an early adopter. I would say a trailblazer in terms of taking your live event, pivoting really, really fast, and finding a cool way to deliver a ton of value to your members that way.
Okay, so let's pivot a little bit. How about you? I know you have calls on this too. Like, this resource center is invaluable. The cash flow issue. Again, knock on wood, we're fortunate, we're busy, but some people are not, and there's going to be a wait for the PPP money, obviously, and things like that, and the disaster money. Any thoughts on the cash part of it? Because I know you've done a lot of it, and then go see detail on that or listen to details, but thoughts?
Yeah, so again, there's several calls available, recordings that people can go back and listen to, but the first one I did around managing cash was actually a call like this with Clayton Mask, the CEO of Keep, which used to be Infusionsoft, the other company I'm repping today. And we talked about the time over the decade that we worked together where business got slow and where cash became an issue. And so we talked about just ways to think about terms. And when it comes to your sales, you can look at terms and making those more advantageous. You can put together what Rick Barrera, the call we did yesterday, calls an irresistible offer, right? There's just creative ways to put together offers that still bring in cash during this time. New ways. So there are new ways to sell old things, and then there's new things to sell, new ways to package old things. We also talked about pulling cash in earlier, meaning if you have a way to collect money from your customers that typically happens over time, is there a way for you to incentivize them to pull some of that cash forward and collect it sooner? So there's just a lot of creative ways to do it, but that's on the generating cash side. And then of course on the managing cash side, there's ways to go negotiate with service providers, landlord, other people who, I mean, it's not like you're on an island this way. Everybody on the planet is dealing with this pandemic, and there are ways to go negotiate some favorable terms for, the length of time that you have to make some payments, or maybe even renegotiate the payment itself. So there's lots of things that can be done, but the worst thing to do is just to sit around and wait and hope that it's all going to magically take care of itself.
Yeah. So as you were talking, I scribbled, everyone's in the same boat. And you said it as I was writing, because it's like, okay, here, these guys are a lot of them in real estate listening to us. It's not difficult right now to go back to sellers. So now I'm switching from our coaching business to our property business. Not difficult to go back and renegotiate terms. And we've done it with a single phone call. So if you have properties that people aren't paying on, with one phone call, you can get a forbearance of at least 90 days. With one call, you can probably do better. With one phone call, you can extend your terms from 2 to 3 to 4 to 10 years with sellers. This is what's going on right now. So we're being proactive to do that. I think you'll like this, Brett, before you go to the next thought. So we took exactly what you just said. I didn't hear that call, but we took our QLS home study program, which is the foundation. And it's never, ever, ever been discounted unless we're speaking or doing something. And we put it at half price, and we threw the virtual event in it too. So if anyone's listening, like, that's never been done. And our thought was, let's let everyone out there who hasn't gotten into our niche get into our niche. That's what our thought was. And already in April, whatever we're on here filming this, we're past any month goal we've ever done. So it's cool to help a lot of people like that.
Yeah, it is. And you're smart to take, and it's not to take advantage, it's to see opportunity, but you're engaging a larger audience to bring them in. And now at a maybe a price point you wouldn't normally do, but you're making sales when other people aren't. You're adding to your community when other people aren't. And when things do pick up, and they will, you're going to be in a much stronger position. And some of those competitors out there, whoever they might be, are going to be either gone or weak, right? And so you're right to be doing all the things that you guys are doing.
So I mentioned in the intro, obviously our involvement with you guys. You weren't on, so I'll say it again. But I went so far as to say all of our scaling, I owe it to you guys. So these guys, everything they're going to want to know or get access to is on that free site now. I don't think there's ever been a better time for you guys either to say, come look at us, right?
Right. And we're not in sales mode right now. From that respect, we're just helping as many business owners as we can, and people are showing up. And when it does come time to say, hey, here's our irresistible offer, get in now while you can, right? Then we will see sales from that we'll be happy to see. But the point right now for us is to serve. So serve like crazy. And I would advise anybody on this call to put themselves in a position to be the one that others turn to when they need something, right? If you can't if literally people can't buy what you do right now, then go serve them like crazy, so that when things do turn around, you're the one that they go to.
So everything you said involves the listener like getting out of their chair and being proactive in like openly.
Or calling, right? Calling or doing Zoom meetings or whatever. Get out and touch as many people as you can right now, and serve in ways that they will both appreciate now, but then remember later. And then when you get creative and put together the right irresistible offers, you're going to be able to generate sales. And again, your competitors are going to be sitting there wondering what happened.
Love it. Good nuggets. Brett, what didn't I ask you that perhaps the listeners in 94 plus countries now can glean from? I mean, there's got to be some. We're just having open chat here. There's a lot of cool nuggets, a lot of good resources. I'm going to repeat your link. What didn't I ask you that you think these business owners, entrepreneurs of any level would want to hear right now as we wrap up?
Well, you know that I'm a big proponent of leadership in general. So here's what I would say. And I shared this with Stephen Westner, who's a friend of yours in the program here. He's a friend of ours as well. He picked this up as a nugget. I said, look, the best leaders build the best businesses, and the best businesses win. That's in any environment, but it's especially true right now. And if you ever thought of yourself as not being a good leader, what better time to start working on that? Like, we have more time right now than we're used to having. And I know some of you are thinking, no, because I'm doing so much to try to keep this thing going. But in reality, we're not commuting, we're not doing all the same types of meetings. Like, things are a little slower right now. And you could do a lot of internal housekeeping. And that could be your website experience that you've been meaning to get around to. That could mean your own leadership, your own growth. That could mean a new product or a new service, or writing that book you always talked about writing. There's so many things right now that you can do and create that you've told yourself for months or years, I don't have time to do that thing, but wouldn't it be great? Or someday if. And now's the time to do some of those things. And just at the top of that list for me is, you have an amazing asset in your team, in your people. And the better you get at being a leader and engaging them during this time, the more loyalty you'll create in them. But more important for your business right now, the more creativity, the more engagement, the more value you'll get from them as you lead them better.
Such cool thoughts and candid thoughts and high level thoughts, Brett. And I just encourage these guys to get to your resource page. I'll repeat it and I'll put it in the show notes, but growwithelite.com/COVID, because we've had an opportunity to hang out now for better part of 2.5 years, and it's invaluable, guys. So tie into it. I think, and I'd like Brett's opinion on this, who we hang out with is super important all the time. And now we just have to do that on Zoom. But how important is who we surround ourselves with, especially now, Brett?
Oh yeah, I mean that's like a softball. I see that all the time. Whether it's Jim Rohn or Zig Ziglar or any other sales or leadership thought leader, we all know you end up being the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And right now, you don't want to be hanging out with people who are kind of hunkering down, waiting out the storm. You don't want to be with those people. You want to be with people, and I hope this doesn't sound too self-serving for you, Chris, but you want to be hanging out with people like Chris. You want to be listening to these podcasts. You want to be going to events where people are being creative, where they're coming up with new ways to do things. You want to be sharing with other business owners who are trying new things right now. Try new things, try new things, try new things until you find what works. But don't be sitting around or hanging out with people who are going into frozen mode. It's not going to serve you well.
Yeah, you'll freeze.
Yeah, you
So
will freeze.
we appreciate you, Brett, as always. And I'm going to do what I did in the first one of the series 1 of 4. I'm going to offer everyone a free strategy call. It's seriously putting myself out there. But go ahead and email my personal assistant, Kristen, at smartrealestatecoach.com. And that's KRISTEN at smartrealestatecoach.com. I will give you, Zach and I will find time to give you 15, 20-minute free strategy call so you can leave there with some of the things that Brett said, like, how can I, if this happened, or how can I, or who can I get around? All of those things, we'll talk about them personally with you. And I look forward to that. Brett, thanks again, buddy. That was fun and super valuable for the listeners.
Yeah, it's always great to be with you, Chris, anytime. And look forward to serving you and anybody else who wants access to some of those resources.